Hey fellow tankers, it's Mobius Y here, and this video is a couple of replays in my T92 scum wagon. The T92 is the Tier 10 American artillery, and as I'm sure a bunch of you know, I picked this up quite some time ago, finally completing the M5355. Now, why am I bringing you scum wagon gameplay? Well, I've been having the urge to actually play this a fair bit lately. I had a lot of fun using it for a few games on Wizard Ken's live stream on November 28th. And I've just been using it a little bit more and more here and there just to have a lot of fun with. I enjoy this a lot more than I did the M5355, which is the Tier 9 American artillery, which is arguably the best artillery in the game, or at least people say. Personally, I found the M5355 extremely frustrating, to be totally honest. While the maximum accuracy on the gun was quite low, it was very good maximum accuracy, the shots rarely went where I was pointing, so I would wind up missing. And the splash wasn't big enough to do any damage, even when I missed. The T92 is quite a different story. The splash radius on the regular HE rounds and even the premium HE rounds, which while they're really expensive are really fun to shoot, the splash is ridiculously huge. So even if I'm in a good position and I have a really well aimed shot on somebody who's mostly sitting still, and I time my shot just right, I should still be hitting them even with splash for anywhere between 400 to 500 damage just with splash. So on a lower tier vehicle, that can be up to a good quarter of their health, depending on what class of tank it is. And even tier 10 mediums would lose a quarter of their health because of it. But the real joy with the T92 is the AP shells on it, which have 370 millimeters of penetration with an AP shell. That is essentially tier 10 tank destroyer penetration values with an AP shell. If you combine that with the fact that it's artillery, so the shell is going to be coming at a downwards angle, so it'll be hitting armor at flatter angles. Any sloped armor it will be hitting at flatter angles, or in the tops where it's 30 millimeters thick on a lot of tanks, for example. The chances of penetrating and dealing damage with that type of round are extremely high. And it's just hilarious when it happens. So I tried a shot on this 121, but because it was AP and it just missed a cunt hair in front of his track, nothing happened with that shot. That's prone to happen with AP shells in artillery, not just the T92, but with artillery, period. To be fair, it wasn't really a great shot that I had on that 121, but I took it anyways. Trying to help out the team here. We saw that the enemy platoon had pushed that side, and I wanted to try and help out with the battle going on there, just helping the team. The two main things I try to do in artillery, I keep in mind what can I shoot and what are the more dangerous targets available to me. That's basically how it goes. There's plenty of quality artillery players, as I call them in this game, that will simply shoot at a tier 5 light tank in a tier 8 or even a tier 9 game. If they've failed platooned a tier 5 light tank in their game, they simply shoot at the light tank for reasons that are unknown to me. I can only assume why. But, for example, this E-Hundo, in a previous game we played, this E-Hundo, this particular player pooped all over our team, so I knew I had to deal with him. So I was waiting for him to stop and line up his shot, and then I was going to hit him with an AP shell. Now, I didn't stay in third person to see if I actually did damage here, but seeing immediately after my shot that he died, I made the automatic assumption that I had to have hit him and smashed him for quite a buttload of damage. He'd only been shot once and lost some, 400 HP, so he still had about 2,300 or 2,200. And I believe it was an E75 killed him. That could have done anywhere between 400 to 500 damage. So I had to have hit him for at least 16 to 1,800 damage, probably. So I know I kind of I hit that E-Hundo really hard with an AP shell there. But I wasn't having luck with the shots. The aiming reticule was very elongated, so I switched to high explosive rounds in this instance. Normally, I would stick with the AP shells if the aiming reticule wasn't a big oval like it is in this case. If I'm shooting at a much shorter distance, usually on a city map, for example, I would usually stick with the AP shells because the reticule is not nearly as wide. So, because of the fun that I actually have in the T92, I have a desire to actually play this artillery. I had the M53-55 in my garage for a good year, to be totally honest, more than a year, now that I think about it. I didn't have fun playing it. I felt dirty playing it, to be totally honest. And in all, artillery is largely kind of boring to play. There are some exceptions. I mean, Bert is obviously super fun to play. I bust him out now and then when friends are playing Tier 6, for example. But apart from that, I don't really have much desire to play artillery. My other artillery grind right now is the British artillery, and I'm on the Crusader SP. And I have more fun playing that, for sure, than I did with the American artillery, but I still don't really have as much desire to play it as, say, Bert, and especially the T92. The other thing about the T92, like I said, the high explosive rounds. My previous shot actually hit that T110E4 in the tracks, and I still did 1,000 points of splash damage to him. So it's pretty easier to rack up a considerable amount of damage in this tank. I'm still figuring out good locations to set up to fire AP shells at choke points. The key is that I have to get it in. I have to get myself into a good position to where I can shoot at these major choke points and have a very well aimed reticule that is, not only will be fully aimed in when the enemies get spotted and actually appear for me, but in a location where my reticule isn't a big long oval, so I have a much higher chance of either shooting over or shooting well short of where the enemy will be coming from. And that's kind of the trick there. For some city maps, I've actually been pretty successful at that, and it's pretty easy to do on the city maps. But some of these open maps like Steeps and Prokhorovka, I still kind of struggle with. But Prokhorovka is an interesting exclusion because what I'll do is I'll load up a premium HE shell before, and I move somewhere when I first spawn in a game and after every shot. But not on Prokhorovka. I load up a premium HE shell and blind fire at that railroad track crossing as soon as possible, and I always nail 3 guys with a premium HE, and it's hilarious. And it's an easy way to get a buttload of damage. Now this spot here, their artillery was already pre-aimed exactly on my location, considering how quickly he nailed me with that shot. So good on him. He was already pre-aimed on me. But before I died, I managed to get up another shot on that VK-45 Bravo for just under 900 damage, and I set him on fire. So just under 4,000 damage that game, and barely breaking a sweat. As you can see, I did 1717 damage on that E-Hundo with an AP shell. I didn't stick around to see how much damage I did. The VK-45, I did 1143, including fire, so he obviously didn't have an extinguisher. And the E4, I did 1046. Very easy to rack up damage with this artillery, and it's very fun to do so as well. So here's a good example of a location where I know they're going to come up to a choke point in the D6 and E7 sector. So the idea there is I want to get in a good position where, depending on where I spawn, I can get a good shot at the choke point that they're going to need to get into the middle. So since we're north spawn, I know I'm going to be aiming in at the E7 area, where the other team's going to come from. So I want to get into a position where I can shoot as much down that laneway as possible, as well as have as small a reticule as possible. And my other hope is that they have some dangerous tanks actually go up there. I don't want to wind up shooting, a bottom tier medium tank in the game, like the T-44 or something like that. I feel like a douchebag when I'm stuck shooting just those kind of tanks, bottom tier TDs or mediums or what have you. That's not my priority in my mind as artillery, and I don't think a lot of people really adopt that. I think a lot of our quote-unquote quality artillery players, they'll shoot at, the first thing that they see is what happens a lot. And I can kind of tell because a lot of the times that's me in a scout tank or a medium tank. And next thing you know, I have 8 artillery shells flying at me over the course of the next 4 or 5 minutes. You know, what can you do? That's fine. So my concern was setting up as quickly as possible. My reticule is not that great. It's very narrow on that location, but it's still pretty elongated. But I'm hoping that there's enough people there that wherever the shell lands, it's going to be hitting somebody. And I have an AP loaded, so if I miss, I'm doing no damage. A premium HE would be very interesting to have here. So the first guy that gets spotted is this poor M103, and I just fire my shot, boom, 1747 damage. He is on life support, and it's not even a minute and a half in the game. Poor guy, his game is over in about the next 20 seconds here because he's one shot. Somebody can just poke around the side, shoot him right there, and my platoon mate finishes him off. So that's... It's kind of evil, but it's just funny in retrospect that a single AP shell can absolutely just ruin somebody's game in the blink of an eye. And it's kind of fun to do with this tank. Don't ask me why. It just is. And it has made me start to enjoy playing artillery again. Now, this is an example of what I like to call prioritizing. T95s, they're fairly tough nuts to crack, especially from a distance. So upon seeing that the TD down here, which was my best shot that I had available to me, was the T95, I knew I got to take him out. So I had another AP shell loaded. Not the best reticule, but I figured I'll take the shot anyways. Boom. There goes all of his health. Just like that, his game's over. And, you know, had that T95 been left alone, he very well could have caused problems for the tanks that we had pushing in the middle, like where my platoon mate is right now. So had they come through the middle there, that T95 could have actually dished out a significant portion of damage because he was in a pretty good location for him to shoot at them coming out of there. He had a pretty good firing line, and he was far enough away where his weak points would be very tough to hit. So when I saw what that TD was, I immediately told myself, he's got to be my target, and I will keep shooting him until he's dead, essentially, with whatever it took. One AP shell, I lucked out there, it was only one AP shell. I would have switched to high explosive and shot a bunch of those if it didn't work, but that's fine. So, reassessing my priorities once these other guys got spotted because nobody went to the north side of the map on our team. Hitting a T54 for just under 1100 damage with an HE shell. Not bad. Really good shot considering how bad the aiming reticule was. You can see it was basically filling the whole screen when I zoomed in. From the left to the right, that is what I consider a bad shot. So I technically really lucked out when I hit that shot. And I'm okay with that. Easiest 1100 damage that I've ever done in any tank. So again, prioritizing here, the E5, while he is alone, and he is going to get butt-fucked in a minute. The Yog Tiger's one shot, I don't have a shot on him whatsoever. So I decided to try and take on the E5. And that's when I repositioned. The last few guys are down in the south there. And they've been hemmed in for pretty much the whole game by our force on that side of the map. So I didn't really think that it was very imperative to me for me to aim down in that direction just yet. But once we dealt with the rest of the team on all of the corners of the map, and it's not even 5 minutes in the game, then I realized, okay, I need to actually start focusing there because there's at least 2 or 3 guys holding up our whole team. So I see a very weak Patton and a half-dead Death Star, so I immediately prioritize the Death Star. I don't have a good shot on him, but I take it anyways. Somebody else smokes him just before my shot hits him and finishes him off. So, unfortunately, I didn't get all that damage, but I did get about 350 there. Doesn't really matter. We took out the Death Star. And there is a second one down there, but with one less of them now, it's much more likely that our team can make a strong push here. So, I am by no means a good artillery player. I will be the first person to say that. But, you know, I do what I can. I don't simply tunnel vision on the first tanks that are spotted and all that jazz. You know, I do my best to pick my targets as best as I can. You know, like I said, the first thing is, what can I shoot? Can I reposition to shoot more of these guys that are holding up my team's advance? And if I do have a shot on multiple bad guys, you know, what would be the biggest threat to my team? What would be the biggest problematic tank, essentially? That's what I look for. And it's also just super fun to load up armor-piercing shells with the T92, 370 millimeters of penetration, and they have a ridiculous amount of alpha damage. I don't remember the exact number. It's about 2,000 or something insane. Maybe 1,800. I'm not too sure. I'm sure somebody could correct me on that. But I mean, there was a game on Ruinberg where we essentially, me and an E50M gave a Jaggeru the good old 1-2 punch because I wasted the Jaggeru with an AP shell for 1998 damage exactly, and the 50M immediately poked out right afterwards and shot him in the lower plate to finish him off for the 202 damage that he had left over. It was pretty awesome. So that's it for that game there. 4860 damage, barely breaking a sweat. I do enjoy playing the T92. It's fun. I do feel like a douchebag, but that's essentially some artillery gameplay for you guys. I hope you don't hate me too much for it. But I mean, 1700 damage on the M103, 1700 on the T95. There's 3400 damage right there with barely breaking a sweat. This tank, this artillery is quite fun to play. I enjoy it a lot more than the M53-55 myself. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time. In the meantime, this is Mobius Y signing off. Have a good night.